Hello, I'm Gabriela Resta Montero. I'm the managing editor at Rocky Mountain PBS. Today we're here with Steve Zansberg. Steve Zansberg is a First Amendment lawyer, and he is an expert on intellectual property and media law. And just as a disclaimer, our newsroom, Rocky Mountain PBS, does have Steve Zansberg on retainer. We turn to him for all manner of media questions. He's here today to talk to us about the First Amendment as it relates to campus protests, and we're heading into an election year and just exercising our free speech rights. So welcome, Steve.
Thank you. It's nice to be here.
Thank you so much for being here. So we're going to start off with just the basics. What is the First Amendment, and how can we understand it today?
Well, the First Amendment is the first of the 10 amendments known as the Bill of Rights, and it contains protections against government interference with certain liberties, including the freedom of speech or of the press, and religious liberty, the right to peaceably assemble, to petition our government for redress of grievances. So it's a prohibition on government. Even though it says Congress shall make no law, through the 14th Amendment, it has been applied to lower governmental bodies, not just Congress, but state legislators, city councils. All forms of government are prohibited from interfering in the freedom of speech, which doesn't mean an absolute right. There are limitations on all rights that are granted in the Bill of Rights, and that's what the First Amendment does. It places restrictions on what the government can do with respect to people's rights to speak freely.
The First Amendment it has been in the news because, of course, of all the campus protests that have been going on. I wanted to just ask you about what the rights of protesters and what the rights of other students who are not protesters are on campus when, there is an encampment at a school, when classes are canceled, and what that balance has looked like in practice over these past few weeks.
Right. So I think because, as I just stated, the First Amendment is a restriction on the government, we should think about these encampments and the student protests in two different settings: government-funded schools, the University of Colorado, et cetera, and then private schools, including the University of Denver, Columbia University, which I guess was the first. So the First Amendment really has nothing to say about what the university administrators are doing on private colleges, because they're just not governmental actors. There may be other rights that the students on those campuses have because of contractual rights, because of student code of conduct, and in exchange for their paying hefty tuitions to attend those colleges, they have certain rights that are defined by contract, but not by the First Amendment. So then the second set of settings are universities that are funded by the government and are administered by the government. And there the First Amendment does have something to say. And of course, universities are recognized, both governmental and non-governmental, as havens, the epicenter for exchange of ideas and for free interchange of debate and freewheeling academic freedom in the classrooms by the professors and the students alike. So the First Amendment does apply to the actions that university and college administrators take with respect to students' protests on those campuses. But as I said, no right under the First Amendment is absolute, and no one has the right to march into a governmental proceeding like a courtroom or any governmental function, the State House when it's in session, and just hold forth and interrupt and interfere with the orderly conduct of what's going on in that setting. These are known as time, place, and manner restrictions. I'm not allowed to take a bullhorn and walk down my street in a residential neighborhood at midnight shouting Palestinians deserve better rights or support Israel, whatever position I want to take. Now, the government can't pick and choose to enforce that restriction based upon which side of the debate I'm on. That's viewpoint discrimination. So these time, place, and manner restrictions, as they're called, have to be content neutral. They can't be enforced only against one side in a controversy and not against the other side. But such restrictions mean that if students are going to occupy a university building or interfere with classes, they don't have a First Amendment right to do that. People are mistaken if they believe that they have an absolute First Amendment right to say whatever they want to say, wherever and whenever they want to say it. It's not true on a university campus, and it's not true anywhere else. The rights of the students to attend classes without interference, that's sort of what the university administration is doing when they are placing those time, place, and manner restrictions on these encampments and protesters. There's no doubt that students on a government-funded college campus have the right to speak and to share their views and to call upon the administration to divest of investments in Israel or other companies supporting the ongoing war between Israel and Hamas. But they just can't interfere with the educational mission of those institutions.
So part of the ongoing, it's abated somewhat now from the peak a few weeks ago. And I think when you and I had spoken earlier, you mentioned, well, school's almost out, kids are graduating, so the campus debate at least is changing in that regard. But the U.S. House did pass the Anti-Semitism Awareness Act, which the ACLU has criticized because it expands the definition of anti-Semitism to include political criticism of the state of Israel. And there has been, and I'm no doubt there will be, very, very passionate debate about this particular bill. Right now, it's not clear what the future for it is in the Senate. And so I know that I'm putting you on the spot because there's no case law. But I did want to ask you about that because that does seem to be Congress, the government, stepping in on regarding speech.
The real question is, what are the consequences? Right. I mean, we're not going to be punishing people for speaking in an anti-Semitic way, right? I mean, if that were true, then we could ban Mein Kampf, Hitler's anti-Semitic tome, and all kinds of things would be punished. Hate speech, even saying, all Jews do not deserve to live, or all Palestinians do not deserve to live, is horrible and terrible offensive speech, but you can't be jailed or fined for saying it. That's what the First Amendment means. The government cannot impose any punishment on you for those types of statements. Now, there are contexts in which certain speech can be deemed can be deemed either fighting words or true threats, where people can feel so harassed. There's workplace harassment. There are limits on where speech can have consequences and can be subject to governmental regulation. But they're very narrowly confined and defined. Those categories of unprotected speech, like fighting words and incitement to imminent lawless conduct and things of that sort, does not mean all hate speech that might make people feel uncomfortable, is punishable.
Can you maybe leave us with kind of the positive aspects and what the First Amendment brings us and how we might understand it as a tool for our democracy?
I am encouraged that this perceived injustice has brought out a great number of young people to speak up and get their voices heard. And I'm hopeful that it's not limited to the Israeli-Hamas war, but that climate change and multiple other injustices in our society will similarly bring the younger generation to make their voices heard, because I think our society will benefit from it.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.